I'm very glad to meet one of the experts here in ELT and academic politics, testing, curriculum design, you name it, he has it. And this is none other than Dr. Ali Issa. He's a professor at the National University SQ in Oman. Over to you, Dr. Ali. In your long tenure, I think you have been into ELT for the last 20 or
over 30 years.
30 years. And from that period, when you started teaching in the career, what evolution of ELT have you seen so far?
In Oman?
Briefly. Wherever you have.
Well, I mean, we tried to change the curriculum. First of all, I should thank you for giving me this opportunity, actually, to interact with you, to share and exchange knowledge as well, and help any viewers understand more and more about Omani ELT. Okay, going back to the question. Well, the syllabus got changed a number of times. Teacher development has evolved. Assessment has changed, definitely. If we're talking physical issues, then let's talk about the premises. Schools are better equipped now than they used to be before. Even administratively, things have definitely changed. But interestingly enough, well, probably if you want to talk about the students, obviously, this is a different generation now, because the parents are different than they used to be 3 or 4 decades ago. So the students' perceptions, expectations, their ways of looking at things have changed drastically. There's no doubt about that. But there are certain things which are still prevailing. The teaching and the learning of English have probably not changed much, interestingly enough. And I have always been a great believer that it's all about beliefs, and beliefs fall under this huge controversial umbrella of ideologies. Ideologies are always there as beliefs, but then the danger takes place when those beliefs turn into practices. And then you have very few individuals with incredible power, with amazing social and cultural space being occupied, controlling the fate of millions who are simply powerless, controlled, underprivileged. And those very few individuals start to sell their beliefs to those millions who try to play the obedience game. Then this is where you start seeing disasters taking place, unfortunately, where you see policies being sabotaged, practices repeating themselves over and again, over and times again. Things are hardly changing, because it's all about individual beliefs, pretty persistent, could be old-fashioned, lacking being contemporary, serving other interests and needs of other people, either inland or beyond. And this is where this network of business starts to come into play. Business with different paradigms, with different concepts, with different understandings. And things start to become really complicated, pretty complex, and people struggle really to understand what is happening behind the closed doors sometimes. Because if you don't try to really investigate systematically and critically, you will always struggle to be able to put those jigsaw puzzles together and start to see, because by putting those pieces together, you are actually putting the small bits together in order, at the end of the day, to be able to see the big picture. And once step A is not performed or performed with a lack of competence, with lack of awareness, then step B will always remain full of flaws, will always remain incomplete, and you will always see that things are not materializing in the way you have always thought they would materialize. That's why in all my work, either presented or published, that is the main focus. We need to look at policies. When you look at them, when you read them, you would tell yourself, how much value does this have? How much weight, how much significance? After all, it's a couple of lines probably, or a couple of pages. Probably this is it on the surface. Down beneath, it's a massive thing. It's loaded with values and ideologies. And this is where you need to see it, to read between the lines, to relate it to cognitive psychology, to political analysis, to critical sociology. Only then you will be able really to dismantle the whole thing, to deconstruct it, and take a big dip, and be able to see what's hiding there, and just bring it out, and enjoy looking at it with a critical mind and a critical eye, and analyze it then, and see how it relates, and where you stand exactly from all that.
That's great analysis, Dr. Ali. The trends, approaches and methods have been undergoing a lot of changes.
Indeed.
So in your view, what are the best approaches in ELT in this context? Or how did it change from the past to present, and what will be the future?
When you say this context, are you referring to the Omani context?
Middle East context.
Middle East,
Oman
basically.
In general.
Well, that's interesting, because this is what I basically discussed in yesterday's talk. Using the word best, that's a propaganda. When you say best, then you are simply referring to benchmarks, to standards, to numbers, to figures. Because this is what they say, numbers never lie. But with teaching, with ELT, with education, everything is subjective. Everything needs to be contextualized in the first place. We need to be aware, fully aware of what we have, how it is shaped, how it started, where it is going from there, and be able to analyze all that. Only then we will start to customize whatever we have and start using it. But again, customizing doesn't mean that it's the end of the road, because as I said earlier, it's all subjective. And subjectivity is usually looked at differently by different people. So you may accept that as a customized procedure. It works perfectly well in your context. It may not do so in my context. So customization here will have a different meaning, a different concept. And this is it. Teachers as learners, teachers as researchers, teachers as critical reflectors, teachers as empowered people and empowering agents. I have always been a great believer that it's all about the teachers. No matter how much you are being asked to comply to things, you will always have that room to maneuver, provided it is informed, it is based upon research, it is based upon critical investigation. Otherwise, you will always be down there, always subordinate, always underprivileged, always controlled, and you will lose your liberty and your freedom. and you will never be able even to empower your students because you lack that power yourself.
Good ideology. Now, the skill development has been a buzzword. You know, for the last 15, 20 years, in our places, Eastern countries, it has been there, and in the West, it has been there. Now it's interesting to see that in the Middle East also, people started talking about 21st century skills, employability skills, blah blah.
Yeah.
So how do you see the future of skill development in Oman? What is happening in this area?
Again, you try to keep an open mind here, really. You try to be optimistic sometimes, but research has shown very, very clearly that there are so many graduates still and probably will continue to struggle with acquiring these very important skills. Again, these skills, where are they coming from? These are the gifts of globalization to us. There's no room to doubt this at all, because simply these skills are very closely linked to the bigger thing, which is English language. And that's probably the biggest, the mother of all skills, if you want to call it. And then those skills will feed into that. And again, thanks to those ideologies that are being imposed upon us and that our even high-profile stakeholders have already embraced, have already bought, have already accepted. Colonialist, culturalist ideology, no doubt. You've got the meritocratic ideology in play. You've got the one I talked about extensively yesterday, the neoliberal economic rationalist ideology. All these are necessitating actually the acquisition of these skills. In Oman, we still tend to be a little bit behind in relationship to helping students to acquire and develop these skills. Again, going back to the bigger issue of this policy practice drift, policies call for it, they emphasize it, they promote it in any possible way, economic, political, social, cultural, you name it, it's there, educational, academic. Yet, those people who are at the implementation end continue disturbing this for different reasons. Again, ideological conflict, ideological contest will always be there, will always be powerfully present. Are you willing to take notice of it? Or do you want to turn a blind eye? That's a decision for a high-profile stakeholder to make and to be able to work on.
So, Dr. Ali, many countries have been invaded by the British physically, and ideologically, culturally, some other countries invaded countries. And people undergo a lot of changes. But it's very interesting to see in the Middle East and particularly Oman that the outlook doesn't change. When we look at people, look at me and you, we have changed a lot in terms of attire, maybe practices, many things. But in Oman, still that culture is preserved. And it's amazing to see. What's your comment about it?
You said it yourself, it's amazing to see. Yes. It's awareness, probably. People's identity, loyalty to identity. Remember, again, now we are touching on another ideology issue, where you talk here about enculturation and socialization. And the government has played a massive role since day one in preserving this, in getting people into accepting that this is my identity, this is my culture, no matter what. English, when you look at the two languages, two great languages, Arabic and English, each one with its own traditions, with its own paradigms, with its own domains of use and practice. From day one, everybody could tell that, okay, English, cannot invade Arabic and vice versa. Each one will be there. They will live in peace together, in harmony, without harming each other. This will play its role and contribute in its own right, and so will the other one. And to be able to differentiate in this way, I firmly believe, because language plays a massive role in culture, in preserving culture and advancing culture and all that, helped greatly in putting the two, each one in its own place, and regulating it then, without the other interfering in the functions and domains of the other one. And this is probably one of the very important characteristics here. You'll come across so many Omanis who would tell you that, well, I watch movies, Hollywood, I listen to songs, I mingle with English, with native speakers basically, but I'll always be an Omani.
Yes.
I will never ever change my identity. And that's the interesting bit.
Yeah, interesting.
Because as I said earlier, it's the pressure, it's the policy, it's the conventions, it's the heritage, and all these actually, you will find them in the school curriculum. Once they are there and the teachers are playing their role as agents of preserving this heritage, I don't think you should worry much.
Yeah. That's why many Omanis study abroad, England, America, Australia, and they study the curriculum, testing, everything, and come here to teach. And maybe they are implementing also. What do you see the future of ELT and this language in future? How is it going to be?
That's interesting because, yes, I agree with you. Those are, as we call them in yesterday's talk, public intellectuals. You're expecting them to come and introduce
Yes.
very positive change. But again, if it's a top-down, if it's very rigid, if it's too hierarchical, it's going to be really difficult. Change will be at a very micro level inside the classroom. At the macro level, you will always struggle because the ideological conflict and contest is massive. And as long as you are not occupying that cultural space, which can be a solid platform for your voice to reach the farthest distances, then you will always be confined to your very small world, which is the classroom. You can introduce change there. And it may take a lot of time. Well, it will definitely take a lot of time to develop. But then you have always to be optimistic about it, because change, we know, is painstaking, very tedious, takes an awful lot of time, requires a lot of effort, a lot of thinking. But then this is how it works. We know this is how it works, and we have to accept it sometimes.
What's your suggestion for the young teachers, those who are just beginning their profession?
Well,
Your advice?
continue educating yourself. Continue reading as much as you can. Continue developing a critical mind and eye. ELT is not neutral. ELT is not value-free. ELT has been there for a purpose, for a reason. There is something behind it. And we have to continue learning and educating ourselves more and more to be able to see what's there exactly. if you continue accepting whatever is thrown at you, then you will definitely perish, intellectually that is, in a very, very short time. You'll continue doing the same things over and times again. You will continue fading. You will continue being boring, formal, black and white. And I'm sure no one single teacher wants to be this. We all want to be colorful and vibrant. We all want to introduce informed change. We all want to be effective agents of change. We all want to empower our students to become the next generation of change introducers. And the only way to do it is to continue your hunger and thirst for knowledge acquisition. Otherwise, with this evolution now and knowledge explosion era, you will see yourself one day and you will find that you have missed so much, and probably it's too late to recover. And that will be very painful. That will be a painful end. There's no doubt about it.